So welcome everyone for attending this exciting webinar we're hosting today with our partner, Quyntess, with the title, Network to Create Value and Visibility for Your Direct Material Supply Chain. I am Khaled Boudmer, your moderator for this event. I work for Tradeshift as an alliances director covering Middle East and Africa region. And I am accompanied today by two great speakers who are Quinn, the General Manager of Tradeshift in Middle East and Africa, as well as Julio Cesar Santos, who is the Head of Marketing at Quyntess. Before starting, we'll go to some house rules. As you can see, we're using Zoom as the platform. And don't worry, if there's no light on your webcam, we can't see you. However, as you might have noticed, we will keep all mics muted during the webinar. However, we encourage you to ask any question using the Q&A function over there on the bottom right of your screen. If we have time towards the end of this webinar, we will unmute to open up for more questions. This session is recorded, as you can see on the top left, and we will be happy to share the recording to every participant and attendees of this webinar. The last point, to make sure we get the most out of this session, please refrain from using your mobile phone or multitasking. Now let's start with the agenda of this meeting. Next slide. The first part will be a quick introduction delivered by Quinn, followed by his speech, which is the first principles, networks that create value and visibility in your supply chain. The third part will be covered by Julio Cesar Santos with the title, Networking More for Your Organization and Your Sellers. And then we'll go to the Q&A session. So let's start with the first speaker, Quinn. Dan has 20 years experience in and around procurement, supply chain, source-to-pay digitization, project management, and professional services. He's held senior roles in leading procurement and supply chain transformation projects. And he's now the general manager of Tradeshift Middle East and Africa region based in Dubai. Dan has managed, supervised, and consulted on hundreds of supply chain and procurement digitization programs across Europe, the Middle East, and Africa, and in various sectors from major retailers to national government and oil and gas, as well as the Olympics. Without further ado, let's welcome on our virtual stage, Quinn. Dan, over to you.
Thank you, Khaled. I think you might have set me up for failure. You've said exciting and you said excellent presentations. I hope I can live up to that. Thank you everybody for joining us. Warm welcome from me in sunny, very warm Dubai. As Khaled introduced, my name is Dan Quinn. I'm the General Manager for the Middle East and Africa region. Warm welcome from me, and I hope you find today's session useful. This is probably going to be a series of sessions that we're going to run with some of Tradeshift partners. And it may be that there are elements that you can duck in and duck out of depending on your interest, and hopefully we'll impart some knowledge. Our plan is to try and keep it quite succinct today. So I'll do a very quick overview of Tradeshift and then go into some kind of first principles, which hopefully will set up Julio for his presentation. If we manage it well, we should be around 20 minutes each, give or take, and that'll give us plenty of time for questions. So please do jump in. It'd be great if we can unmute a little bit later on and have everybody ask questions. So without further ado, let me just give you a quick introduction to Tradeshift. If you haven't heard of us, let me just move this off my screen. Okay, so I tend to find that when you look at a company's vision, it says a lot about the business. And it says something about the business that is typically more subtle. So where we're coming from is that, we firmly believe that kind of real digital business networks will revolutionize business software. And what I mean by that is, if you think of what Facebook has done for personal connections, what LinkedIn has done for professional connections, Tradeshift is seeking to do the same for commercial connections. And our vision is to connect every company in the world, creating economic opportunity for all. And as I said, the devil is in the detail on vision statements. So every company in the world implies that we are very much a global organization, which is true. We operate in something like 100 plus countries around the world. But the really important part is creating economic opportunity for all. You'll typically find that many software and B2B software companies are very buyer-centric. They're based around meeting the buyer's needs, and the suppliers typically have to go along with the buyer's needs if they want to do business. And we take a fundamentally different approach, where our vision is to offer strong value proposition to suppliers of the business as well as the buyers. And hopefully you'll see that as we work through my presentation. And essentially we do this by building technology. So we're a technology company at heart. We give our users cheaper access to capital, so improving the working capital on both the buyer and the supplier side. We step change efficiency, so typically automating manual paper-driven processes, and we give our users access to digital global trade. So at a high level, that's kind of who we are. We just some stats. We work with all sorts of organizations around the world. I'll show you a few more on the next slide. We have something like $25 billion a month running through the Tradeshift platform. We have something like 500 global customers, and you know, our compound annual growth rate has been kind of somewhere in the 120% range. If I show you just some of the other customers, really just to establish some credibility, I think there's two things you'll pick up from this. One is there's lots of global brands. We typically work with large organizations. And the second thing is all sorts of different types of industries and sectors. So you've got everything from technology, you know, people like Apple and Samsung, you know, through to fast-moving consumer goods, Danone, Unilever, Mondelez, etc., through to transport and logistics, Quinn, FedEx, DHL, you know, through to banks and pharma and healthcare and various others. So when we're asked what kind of sectors do we support, there is no one sector really. We'll support all sorts of sectors, but it's typically large organizations with large supply chains. It's kind of our sweet spot. We also work with various partners around the world. So you'll see here we tend to work with lots of the business process outsourcing. Some of the systems integrators and advisory firms around the world, as well as some of the banks and various third-party software technology providers, of which Quyntess is one of them, and more on that in a few minutes. And you know, time doesn't allow me to really go into exactly what Tradeshift does and all the various products, but I thought this slide, you know, making it available to you afterwards might be helpful. These are probably our core business solutions at the moment. Tradeshift Buy at its simplest is an e-procurement technology, but at its more sophisticated, it's also private marketplaces. So when I say marketplaces, whether they're private or open, think of maybe Amazon for business. So typically large organizations where they operate in a sector or an industry where they have buyers on one side, suppliers on the other, and they manage the trades between those. Or simply a buying organization creating a private marketplace for their internal use. Tradeshift Pay is accounts payable automation. It's very much at the core of our business. Fundamentally, what we seek to do is to create that connection between buying organizations and suppliers. And there's nothing more fundamental than suppliers need to get paid and buyers need to pay them. So Tradeshift Pay automates that process, leverages digital technology, and you know, essentially does the three-way matching for you. You know, it's free and easy for suppliers to use. Tradeshift Engage provides a visibility solution predominantly to suppliers. So suppliers can log in, they can have a dashboard access to see across all of their customers that are using Tradeshift, and they can see the status of all of their invoices, purchase orders, etc. And it's about giving them free and easy and quick access, not just to the supplier they're dealing with on Tradeshift today, but across any other Tradeshift suppliers they might work with. And then another key element of creating the value proposition for suppliers is what we call Tradeshift Cash. And Tradeshift Cash essentially is a working capitals payment solution. And this allows suppliers to get early payments. They can be paid in as little as 2 working days. And that is particularly exciting and particularly interesting at the moment, considering much of the world is having a bit of a liquidity crunch due to COVID. And then Tradeshift Go is a tail spend management solution. So it's a virtual credit card. So essentially you can access a virtual card using your phone or any device, and then use it to purchase goods and services, automates the expensing and the invoicing process, and gives you visibility for all your spend. So that's a super quick summary on Tradeshift. If you'd like to know anything more about Tradeshift, please do reach out to me. You'll catch me on LinkedIn. Just mention this webinar, so I know who I'm speaking to, and be very happy to connect with you. Anyway, so enough about kind of Tradeshift at a high level. Let's kind of start with some first principles, really, and we've called this kind of networks that create value and visibility in the supply chain. So we'll touch on a little bit about kind of the history of networks, where they are today, the strengths and weaknesses of the different approaches, and how we think Tradeshift is doing things a little bit different and taking some of the technology and some of the concepts that you're used to operating at home into the business world. Okay, it looks like I might have a little bit of interesting technical fun with the slides. I'll crack on anyway. So this slide shows, I think, an interesting piece of work that Gartner did last year. And it was interesting last year, and it's even more interesting in 2020. Essentially, I think everybody on the call is well aware of the importance of digital. And we've all heard the stories of failed businesses that didn't transform into digital and were replaced by either brand new market entrants or a competitor that did it faster. So I think two of the interesting points on this is that half of executives interviewed felt that they were falling behind, and digitalization was a top risk for them. But I think the thing that's probably even more shocking is that nearly 7 out of 10 digital transformation projects are failing to achieve their stated objectives. And I'm going to propose probably 2 elements as to why that's the case. And I think one of them is I've touched on a little bit already, and it's about there being a lack of strong value proposition for all players. If you're a large buying organization and you force your suppliers to participate, well, that will in many times work, but it will only get you so far, and it only really works when the balance of power is in your favor. And typically what happens is suppliers are being asked by multiple organizations to do this. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about the concept of portal fatigue in a few minutes. So I'm going to propose reason number 1 is a lack of value proposition for all players, and it's heavily buyer weighted. But let's spend a little bit more time talking about what I propose is number 2. So I think the second kind of part of it really is this concept of being process focused. So if you look on the left hand side, the Casio watch, I actually think that's quite a cool watch. It's very retro, but essentially what it's doing is it's just digitizing something. It's doing the same thing, but doing it digital. It's not really adding any additional value. Okay, so you've got the date on there and maybe there's a calculator in there, but it's not really doing much to help drive the business and to do anything different. If you look at the smartphone on the right-hand side, that's more outcome focused. That's much more collaborative. Communications are a key part of the phone, not just making telephone calls, but all the various applications. And it's super adaptive. When one application is out of date, you just simply pop another application on it. So it's very adaptive and very easy to use, easy to update, and adds value through a number of different areas. So that kind of begs the question, really, if we're so powerful at home and we've got some of these applications running that we're used to on a very much a daily basis, how comes we're so powerful at home but so lame at work? It's a lovely quote from our CEO, and it makes perfect sense. You should think about the ease of use of any of these, and how Amazon has become part of daily life. And I remember standing in the rain in London, or even standing in the heat in Dubai or Saudi Arabia, waiting for taxis, when actually the ease and simplicity and the end-to-end connectedness of Uber really is just kind of massively improved our personal lives, but not really yet made it into the workplace. And the question is begged is why is that the case? And I'm going to propose that it's about being that kind of outcome-based approach versus a process-based approach. And a process-based approach here, we see why does digital transformation tend to fail or become difficult? And it's that kind of process approach. You get the same people who are very much used to following the same process day after day for a long period of time. They look at it through a lens that they know well, which is the process. And essentially they take that same process and add technology onto it. And really all you end up doing is what Henry Ford said, you know, before the automobile was invented, if I'd been asked what my customers wanted, they would have said, we want to make a faster horse. So essentially what we're trying to do is make here a faster horse by automating existing processes, not dramatically revamping those processes. And what we see here is essentially, if you look at that kind of previous world of process-oriented digitalization, it's very much kind of reactive. It's about dealing with historic data. It's about, you know, command and control and etc. Whereas the new kind of world of this current generation of digital transformation is very much about being more collaborative, having more stakeholders, not just buyers and suppliers, but, you know, banks and other trading partners collaborating in real time, and much more adaptive to change as things evolve. So the next generation of digital transformation is adaptive and collaborative for those reasons. And on the basis of that, everything will be apps and everything will be networked. And the reason for that is if we look at a typical business transaction like this, it's typically reduced to this very simple approach. We have buyers and we have sellers and they trade with each other. And of course, that doesn't really follow reality. Reality is much, much more complex. Supply chains are more like supply networks than chains. Their ecosystems are multi-tier buyers and suppliers, service providers, IT systems, all working together typically across geographies and certainly across capabilities. So a true network has many players: buyers, sellers, logistics providers, app developers, bankers, and you know, we can go on. So it starts to beg the question: what really is the solution to that? How have digital networks become part of the solution? Well, if we look at the original kind of enterprise network, it was very much a one-to-one relationship, similar to the simple box we saw a couple of slides ago. The enterprise is connected to a seller is connected to the enterprise, and they trade that way. At some point in the noughties, that evolved to the web portal concept, which became a one-to-many. Still, you know, relatively inefficient, but a significant step forward. The buying organization onboarded all of its suppliers, and you have that kind of one buyer to multiple supplier enterprise. Of course, the problem with that is each supplier doesn't just have one buyer. Each supplier has multiple buyers across various geographies, various different sectors, product groups, business units, things like that. And so you end up with this concept of portal fatigue, whereby a supplier has to connect to multiple buy-side portals. And if they have 50 customers who all have 50 different portals, it becomes extremely expensive, extremely time-consuming, and even risky. So the multi-enterprise network is really very much where we are today, with some companies really kind of innovating in that area. It's a network platform where you're not just a buyer or a supplier, you're a node on a network. And you know, if you're an organization like DHL, you have your own supply chain, but you also have, you're probably part of other buying organization supply chains. So one of the solutions to that, if we have the network and we have our suppliers on a single platform, so we're talking about a single platform, not multiple platforms in this network approach, it becomes a little bit more like the smartphone metaphor or similarly. So my smartphone, I have applications on it which are, so it's an iPhone, I have applications which are from Apple, from Google, from Microsoft, from Tradeshift, from a whole bunch of other third-party providers. And it starts to move towards, why can't business do this? And why can't business operate the same? And change the way we operate and make business to business a little bit more along these lines, and make it much more collaborative and much more adaptive. And we start to move towards, if we take that approach, to have what I call, I remember playing Tetris on the Game Boy, so I tend to call this the Tetris diagram, or some people refer to it as the Lego diagram. But essentially you have that kind of fundamental platform underneath, which is the Tradeshift kind of end-to-end platform. And then you can add the various applications onto it. So the applications can be whatever your business needs for your business today, and you can change it tomorrow. If you think about deploying applications across your business, the two tough things that are very expensive and very time consuming is getting suppliers to onboard. That typically takes years if you have a very large supply chain. Well, if you already have them in the network and on the Tradeshift platform, you can activate them very quickly. So that speeds that process into, days and weeks, not months and years and maybe decades if you're very unsuccessful. So firstly is about kind of onboarding suppliers quickly, and secondly is about integrating between them. So the Tradeshift platform acts as an integration layer, which you can connect the APIs on the Tradeshift platform and start to develop an ecosystem of applications that meet your needs today and as they change over time. So some examples of the kind of applications we see and we work with on a daily basis. So some of the common ones are things like sourcing and tendering, contract management, performance management, spend analytics, if you're looking at upstream procurement, but also into things that those upstream procurement organizations can't really do. So things like supplier credit risk and scoring, analysis of modern slavery and child labor in your supply chain, fraud detection and prevention, and as we start to talk about Quyntess, we start looking at order collaboration and logistics. And essentially all of that is much like the smartphone. Tradeshift is the hardware in this metaphor, and what you're seeing is a single sign-on. So you log into Tradeshift, you can access the Tradeshift applications, the accounts payable, the marketplaces, the e-procurement, etc. But in addition, you can access via the window you see on the right-hand side of the screen other third-party applications such as Quyntess. So essentially it gets to a point where kind of your partners, your process are digitally connected on the global network. It gives you supply chains that are more agile and are more efficient and more differentiating. It tends to be digital transformation officers and digital transformation managers around the world tend to like that platform approach because they can deploy solutions much faster, much easier, and solve business problems accordingly. But of course, it's not always that straightforward. There are always some challenges. So if we look specifically at the challenges that Quyntess look at and their particular strengths, visibility and connectivity down the supply chain. As I showed in the diagram, you're not just dealing with one supplier. That supplier has a supply chain and tiers of supply chain as you go down it as well. Gaining visibility, that is very difficult. Balancing the need for kind of global scale and global reach, but at the same time having the capabilities to be able to execute efficiently on a local basis. And of course, speed of delivery is always king and is only getting faster. Balancing timeliness, well-timed processes, just-in-time delivery with the requirements of lean inventories at the same time. And then also fundamental to all of this is customer expectations for a digital experience. So customers expect more because of what they've seen at home and what they've seen with Uber, etc. So really these are some of the things that Julio in Quyntess is going to take us through. So Khaled, maybe if I pass back to you, you can introduce Julio.
Sure, thank you very much, Dan. That was a very clear and insightful presentation. And now we know what global digital network means and how it supports supply chain. So our next speaker is going to be Julio Cesar Santos. Originally from Mexico, Julio started his career as a supply chain analyst. He moved in 2013 to China to run his own sourcing agency. During his time there, Julio led dozens of projects in China and Southeast Asia, comprising the purchase of direct and indirect materials, machinery, supplier vetting, quality assurance, and tender fulfillment. In 2019, Julio moved to the Netherlands and joined Quyntess, the leading SaaS provider for direct materials in Europe, as head of marketing. He is currently in charge of all online and offline marketing activities and holds a seat in the Product Development Committee. So let's welcome in our virtual stage Julio Cesar Santos, who will tell us more about Quyntess. Over to you, Julio.
Thank you, Khaled. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Yeah.
perfectly.
I'm actually having some trouble with the network, so I'm just gonna turn my camera off. I don't want to mess up halfway through with the sound. But I'm here together with you guys. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dan, for inviting me and Khaled, and thank you guys for joining. Well, you heard already what's going on over here with Tradeshift and all these amazing ideas, no? I've been doing supply chain for quite a while, not as extensive or as depth as you guys that are actually procurement directors and supply chain managers and operations, but I do have enough insight to understand what's going on around, right? And how these complexities in the supply chain happen, especially in manufacturing, where we have a lot of direct materials to add to our products. And that's something that excited me a lot when I joined Quyntess last year. And that's why I'm more than happy to introduce you guys a little bit about us today, right? So Quyntess, let's move then. Quyntess and Tradeshift, we have been partners since 2015. Can we move to the next slide, please?
Sure, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. So we have been partners with Tradeshift since 2015, but Quyntess has been around as an independent provider of supply chain collaboration solutions since 2004. So we actually saw the rise of web portals, and we were building that back in the 2000s, right? And we saw how this was not enough, and the things that Dan was mentioning already on his presentation is that, you know, what can a supplier do if he has like 50 customers or 70 customers? One is via email and one is via a web portal, and the other one asks you to join to his small marketplaces. It can get very complicated, and if we want to be fair and have an actual win-win situation with our suppliers, and things have to change, and then Tradeshift came through, and that's amazing, no? So in 2015, we started to implement our first applications on the Tradeshift App Store, and we also started migrating our first customers. I'm going to speak about that a little bit later. Quyntess, nowadays we are integrated by a team of professionals from 11 different nationalities. And we support our customer base and, of course, their global community of business partners, either suppliers or vendors or logistics service providers. We are based in Rotterdam, here in the Netherlands, and our mission is basically to simplify supply chain collaboration. That's what we want to do for you guys. And we do this through system-to-system integrations. We use technologies such as API and EDI and open protocols in combination with our native web applications. Our focus, and this is what we always try to work on the most because it's very important for us, is direct materials. Direct materials in a business-to-business context, which means that we focus on critical materials that go into the products that our customers make, and also in the products that the customers of our customers make, right? But I'll talk about that a little bit later on the cases. Let's continue. So this is a little bit of the customers that we have together with Tradeshift. No? Some of them together and some of them are ours. And most of them are in the discrete manufacturing space. They are producing things. They are making machines. And our customers work with MTO, make to order or make to stock. And in some particular cases, they work with engineer to order products. Which basically means that most of the goods or the final products that our customers manufacture require hundreds of suppliers and thousands of different components. I'm sure that you can identify some of the logos over there. You can see a blue mark on some of the companies that we serve together with Tradeshift. So GKN and Fokker, they produce the pieces for airplanes, and you can imagine that if you are building part of the hull, you really need the cables and the chips and this and that and all the different pieces and man buses. I mean, all the different components that you require, the man requires to produce a truck, or for Canon to produce a printer. These are the kind of complex supply chains that we are supporting. We also support the global supply chain of companies in FMCG, in fast-moving consumer goods. In this industry, what requires the integration is not the actual manufacturing, no? But the delivery time and the fast adjustments that we need to make to both the supply and the demand so that companies can stay competitive. Our biggest customer in FMCG is Danone, that you can see over here, and we support them across the world for the global procurement operations. And we do support as well logistics service providers because they are an essential partner. No? Most of the supply chains will require at some point in time a logistics service provider for transportation or warehousing or added value logistics, and these are more or less the components that we are integrated. So how do we do that? I want to show you a little bit of the architecture on the next slide, because this is how Quyntess applications actually work on the Tradeshift platform. So since all of our Quyntess apps are actually native applications to Tradeshift, they share the same UI. Only one account and one login is required for each user. And this particular user account will inherit all the security and the segmentation and the visibility and all the settings that have been defined on the main Tradeshift account. This is extremely important because it's already skipping one step, which was the fact that the supplier has to be jumping, back and forth and back and forth. And every user who is connected to Tradeshift via web or through automated integrations, it doesn't matter, can directly use our applications after they have been activated in the App Store. Now, if we look at the left-hand side of the diagram, we can see what we believe are the customers now and how they are integrated to their ERP in the back end, in the back system. And we use this connection to exchange transactions in and out a company internal system or systems in some cases, especially in big multinationals. Transactions such as purchase orders confirmations or invoices, shipping notifications, etc. Now, if we go to the right side, on the top right, we can observe, and we can see over there that the suppliers are also integrated into their respective inbound and outbound transactions. And the same thing happens with logistics service providers that need to synchronize their services with suppliers and buyers to execute things like shipments and send updates on the status of their invoices, advanced shipping notices, etc. Now, we like to say that we have all the colors, right? So if you're a big supplier or a big logistic partner, you for sure you're gonna plug your system and start working probably with a using Tradeshift UI, right? But buyers and logistic partners can also collaborate directly on the platform through our web applications and take advantage of this as a joint workspace. I mean, it depends on the case, but it can be actually very useful because it has chat options and we can link conversations and like actually decision making to a particular order line or to a purchase order. And this means that suppliers that don't have a system to system connection have the possibility of executing everything directly through the Tradeshift user interface. We don't need to jump, you probably have some suppliers or some customers that you contact them by email, and other guys you contact them by the phone, and you have someone else on WhatsApp, and these kind of things should really not happen because we have solutions already available. And in this way, that's how we support actually Tradeshift on this vision of providing end-to-end collaboration between buyers and sellers and carriers on this particular single platform, single network. We do this through different apps that I want to show you now. And I'll try to be to put myself as far from the product as possible. So this doesn't sound like a sales pitch, but I'll tell you quickly. We have 6 apps available on the Tradeshift App Store, and a 7th one that is on testing phase right now. So we do have apps that go from order collaboration for purchase orders, contracts, and service orders to forecast collaboration that enables the exchange of delivery schedules as well. No? And then the 3rd one that we have is e-logistics that manages the shipment of goods, as you can imagine, and is able to share information with different levels of detail. It can announce the complete shipment, for example. It can include the multiple SKUs or the serial numbers of the items shipped. And we do have a feature there as well, which is called Pack and Stack, which helps us describe how are the goods actually, part of the goods actually packed per se, to reduce the loading and unloading times. And this helps a lot for carriers and also for warehouse managers to understand better what's in the front and back and how are things packed, to make this process from unloading to shelf for the inventory faster. We have the supply chain management dashboard as well that consolidates all the data from these applications into a particular panel and a dashboard with real-time indicators that that can help you facilitate decision making and identify exceptions, maximize performance, etc. In a more proactive way. Other applications that we have handle electronic documents, especially if they are special, I'll say, such as blueprints or contracts or service level agreements. So we give you this particular vault, safe repository where you can keep them, right? And we have another for quality related claims, and enable a shared inventory management app also for complex scenarios that I described before, like when you have stock on consignment, or when the inventory is actually managed by your supplier, you have an inventory in your supplier's warehouse. And finally, we are doing the beta of a planning workbench app to support material resource planning and help planners to finally get out of their Excel files or their particular material resource planning software that is very often completely disconnected from the rest of the organization. And with this idea, I want to go to the next slide with this idea of removing people from their silos. Because especially when it gets into manufacturing or into very robust and complex supply chains, this happens, and it happens all the time. And we try to integrate all these aspects of the supply chain to add value to companies. And we try to go further than web portals or just EDI solutions, which have been around for 30 years now. We try to integrate all the transactions and all the business partners, as you can see here on the slide, in a data model that links all of these stakeholders that are in the supply chain in a way that items that have been shipped or bought can be tracked to different purchase orders or order lines that have been issued, modified, confirmed, and to shipments that might be partial or total, and to give this complete transparency of the full procure to pay process. I'm speaking a little bit fast. I get very excited at this part, actually, because this cause and effect relationship helps manage the whole procure to pay process, right? And resolve exceptions that could happen in a more proactive way and more in context with the transactions that cause these exceptions. So if you actually have a way to track all the steps that happened before something went wrong, that helps you much more to be proactive and to be able to help your suppliers and to help your own company to move forward and into more exceptional operation management. And since all these connections transactions are connected to each other, it helps us to proactively and automatically send alerts and of events that did not occur as planned, and that could create a problem in the future, right? As an example, maybe, for example, if we have an unusual service level agreement of 5 days with a particular supplier, we could send an automated alert on Monday for a supplier that is supposed to deliver something on Friday just because we haven't received the SAN. This kind of automatic alerts we can generate it through Tradeshift and using our apps. And thanks to the supply chain dashboard, we can help organizations analyze and build continuous improvement plans together with their suppliers, monitor the execution of service level agreements, and provide a common dashboard to break down the details of the actual partnerships, right? All this from the same place. And I think this is extremely important because then the suppliers and buyers don't need to try to understand what's going on and, you pull the information from your own system and take the Excel file and put it in Google Drive and send it to your supplier and ask him what's going on. Because at the end, when you do that, you have only half of the story. And in operations, this happens is very common and is actually very bad. So what we're trying is to build this single version of the truth for both suppliers and buyers to create in the long run trust and understanding among all the business partners in a culture of continuous improvement instead of just chasing or whipping your suppliers, no? And I saw this, before we move to the next slide, I saw this happening so many times while I was working in China, right? How it's almost like supplier terrorism when you just don't pay your suppliers and you say, oh, well, you know, like fulfill me with the next order and then we'll see what happens. And these kind of things, when you are trying to develop a lean supply chain, you have to move forward from that and really start working together with your suppliers. And maybe all this is a little bit high level, so I want to show you in this slide how can all these different processes and organization of your direct procurement can benefit different departments or functions, right? So each of our apps has direct benefits for all of you guys. I'm not sure if maybe some of our attendees today are in warehousing or in operations or accounts payable. Just have a look at this screen, and you'll probably find one thing that you can relate to. And I am quite sure that these activities that you see on the table right now on the screen, you are doing them already, right? I mean, these things happen every day, but I am also very sure that they require a lot of offline effort, sending emails, phone calls, sharing spreadsheets, or copy pasting data from one portal to the other or to your internal application, etc. No? And we always have this conversation when we have initial meetings with customers, no? And how digital do you think email is? And it relates directly to the analogy that I'm presented with the Casio watch and an iPhone. The truth is that in 2020, sending an email is just sending a letter that arrived faster. It doesn't add any value to your company anymore. So we need to move towards this networked solutions, right? And we have to move to them because it has actual benefits. And I want to share with you a couple of success cases. So you can actually see where the action is, you know? Where's the value and for whom? So you can have a better idea of how big these benefits can be. Let's move to the next one, Dan. So let's talk a little bit about this slide. Here are some charts that summarize the performance of one of our customers that is running together with us an end-to-end process through our apps and the Tradeshift network. It's literally like from forecast to payment of the invoice through the Tradeshift network using our apps. To put this in perspective, we have compared the results to a P2P benchmarking study by Hackett Group. This was released last year. And in this report, all evaluated companies are ranked based on their performance. So you have the top 15% that are the top performers that we are representing here with the blue bar. And the rest, the other 85% are considered a peer group. And we represent them here with the green bar. And the yellow one is Canon production printing, you know? So just have a look and see the numbers. In terms of no-touch orders on the first chart, which are purchase orders that are modified, confirmed, and shipped without human intervention. These are like fully automated purchase orders. Canon scores 87%, sorry. This is twice the performance of the peer group, and still much better than the top performers. And this is not because they are like super lean and like the product is selling like bread. In fact, the numbers you are seeing is from a division of Canon that specializes in big format printing. So all these just big format printers that are currently in a process of reinventing their business model because it's not like it used to be 25 years ago, right? And in terms of invoicing, which of course is triply matched, you know, is subject to the triple match on the Tradeshift platform. Canon performs also very well. And this is possible because we are actually handling this process from the beginning to the end. And we consolidate all approved changes to the purchase orders and the shipping information, goods receipt. We match partial shipments and so on the same platform, which in a classic procure-to-pay setup, even the best performing companies, even the most lean companies will do this a posteriori. I mean, after everything happened, you put your information, you get the results of the week or of the month or of the quarter. And and you see what happened, no? Or of the week. And what does that mean? That means that you will be holding a lot of unpaid invoices until you finish all the approval and the due diligence, and suppliers don't get paid on time, and you're actually missing your opportunity to get early payment discounts, which is something that Tradeshift offers, by the way, which is pretty cool, I'll say. And this is on the buyer side, right? But on the supplier side, the invoicing automation and all this streamlined procure-to-pay process has its own advantages, because the processes on the supplier side are also smooth. And the result, which is very important, it doesn't add up to zero for them. It's not whipping the supplier anymore, but we are building a win-win for all partners in the network, because at the end, this is the way that Tradeshift was designed. And with this idea of creating a win-win in the network or through Tradeshift, a win-win for both suppliers and sellers, I want to introduce the last case. I promise you that you guys can go back to work in a few minutes only, because this one is super interesting, right? Danone. So I want to show you a different user case here that demonstrates a very interesting value case, because Danone was already our customer. We had, web portals for them for many years. And then when we moved to Tradeshift, we proposed to Danone that we migrate together with that they migrate together with us, sorry. And one of the things that we mentioned is that this will make the onboarding process simpler for them, because on the platform, suppliers can really connect to Danone with a connection request, just like LinkedIn or Facebook. And there's actual self-study or self-onboarding process that is really intuitive. And for a company like Danone that has a global supply chain, I will believe that this added a lot of value, no? Especially because this applied to suppliers with lower purchase volumes. The long tail of suppliers now, if you have like maybe top 20% of your suppliers have like 80% of the purchases, but you have all these 80% of suppliers that have 20% and they are very high maintenance. Additionally, those suppliers joining the Tradeshift network took advantage of other free apps that are already available on the platform, which they couldn't have utilized or benefited from, because Danone and Quyntess do not provide them. No, this is just a collateral benefit for the suppliers, and also that they were able to serve other customers through Tradeshift, other buyers. So Danone joined Tradeshift and even decided to change some of its back then the apps that they were using for existing apps in the platform, which was the case in particular with contract management, that they changed it globally. And this helped Danone to increase the supplier adoption rate by 3. That was really, really crazy. And also, as I mentioned before, Pareto's rule 80-20, no? So maybe this 20% of the suppliers that have 80% of the purchase orders represent the vast majority of the business, but is all the hundreds of suppliers with low transaction volumes that typically require the 80% of care. Just the fact that Tradeshift has been there has been a huge benefit for Danone. Pretty much enabling Danone to operate its supply chain as a profit center and a service center, because they can see all the suppliers from there. And due to Tradeshift network structure, trading partners were also one link away. I mean, tier 2 and tier 3 suppliers. So organizations supplying raw materials to the non-suppliers were visible and could be reached to the non. So in this case, let's imagine a supplier of sugar and a supplier of strawberries for the yogurt. And this was a great benefit for food safety and traceability, but the advantages were also visible in the execution of their supply chain. And I mean, I cannot give you numbers. In this particular case, I cannot give you numbers, but you guys as professionals in the supply chain, you can estimate the potential impact of 3 very important points. No? Number 1 is that you organize contracts with level 2 and level 3 providers directly. So these strawberry and sugar suppliers. No? Number 2, you execute shipments and deliveries of goods, all the logistics, from level 2 and 3 suppliers to level 1 directly. So you arrange the shipping of your strawberries and your sugar to the producer of strawberry jam, which is, by the way, going to be used on your yogurt. And number three, at the same time, you have this network level visibility and monitoring, which means that you can see your suppliers, the suppliers of your suppliers, and the suppliers of those suppliers, assuring a super lean supply chain. And with all these reduction strategies that we started developing since 2015, Danone has successfully operated like near to zero inventory plants worldwide in such critical supply chain as FMCG. And well, I don't want to make it any longer, but this is more or less what we do, right? Yeah, I'm gonna go back to the screen to you guys. I mean, it's when it comes to really complex supply chains, it's really impressive how often companies are so back behind, and how easy can we help them move forward with some additional effort, right?
Very good, Julio.
Thank you very much, Julio, for this interesting presentation and the case studies. I would just remember one most important thing you said is you building a single version of the truth between suppliers, buyers, and all parties. And I think it just says it all. Now this is the time to move to the Q&A session. And for that, I'll go through the questions and ask the questions to our speakers. Some of the questions have been answered already in the chat. However, I'll just go through them again. First question from Khalid Muhammad, which is, can I get the presentation slides sent to my email? And of course, we will share with you. And if anybody is interested, we'll send you the recording of this webinar. And if you're interested by the slides, we can send it across as well. With regards to the second question from Danaraj, can the partners get an access to Tradeshift apps to get hands-on and understand the features and functionalities? Please clarify. So for this, if speakers will allow me, I'll respond to that one because it deals with partners, and Danaraj is one of our partner that I've had the chance to work with since many months. So yes, we've got partners enablement sessions where we enhance the capabilities and skills of partners on apps, including Quyntess, and we will cover this Quyntess part during the enablement session. With regards to the other question for our speakers, question to Julio from Nisreen, is Quyntess a shipment tower control?
That's a good question. No, from a network perspective. From a network perspective, we go further than an actual tower, control tower. No? I understand what you mean, and we used to do this, and we used to sell it per se as a control tower. But when you come within the network, the concept of Tradeshift network, like control tower stays a little bit behind, right? Yes, we do have a control tower. Yes, you have full visibility if you want to see it that way. I mean, indeed.
Thank you very much, Julio. Next question is from Micah. Micah asked, could you also increase transparency in material use in the supply chain and, for example, work with shared product passports? So maybe I'll let Dan respond to that, and Julio, you can add on the Quyntess side.
I think that's probably a Julio one rather than me. Transparency in material and supply chain. I think, Julio, is that one for you?
Yes, I'm reading the question right now. Like in material consumption, usually that will live within your ERP. We can for sure push information from the ERP towards your supplier or towards the dashboard for you guys to understand better how material consumption is being consumed. Sorry for the redundancy, but the actual usage will live within your ERP in the inventory module, and you will see how is it being consumed there. And then we can pull this information and push it to the platform for you to have a better idea of how does that correlate to purchase orders, in actual acquisition. It's possible, and it's not complicated. We've done a lot of like this particular made up tailored solutions for different customers.
Thank you very much, Julio. We are reaching the end of our webinar. Actually, it's going to be the end of the hour. So I'd like to thank everybody who have participated in this webinar. I'd like to thank our speakers for today, Dan Quinn and Julio Cesar. Thanks very much for these great speeches. And I'll just remind everybody that we will send you the recording of this webinar to your mailbox. And obviously, if you have any interest, as I can see Nisreen, I've already mentioned in the chat box that she wants to talk about what we do on supply chain collaboration, feel free to contact us directly and we'll be happy to have a one-on-one session and going further down in demos and more. Thanks again, everybody, for attending this webinar and have a great week.
Thank you, Khaled. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.